Hello everyone and welcome to a new GigaOm webinar. Today, the title of the webinar is Object Storage and Flexible and Sustainable Data Platform for IT Transformation. I am Enrico Signoretti, GigaOm Analyst for Data Storage, and today with me I have Jon Toor, CMO from Cloudian. Hi John, how are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Enrico.
So John, before starting with the webinar, maybe we can talk a little bit about you and Cloudian, just to give a background to our listeners.
Yeah, thanks. So you mean the high-level story on Cloudian is that we are an enterprise object storage company based out of California. We've been in business since 2011, and we specialize in S3 compatible object storage systems that are on-prem. So these are systems that reside in your data center, co-located with your servers and other sources of data. And they are available both in software and appliances. So we support a variety of business models. And we do this for enterprises of all shapes and sizes. So as we go through this webcast, we'll talk a little bit more about the different kinds of use cases and how object storage solves problems. But these are systems that are accessible, easy to use, and suitable for really a wide variety of use cases.
Fantastic. So let's take a look at the agenda. So today we will talk about the reason why we need a flexible and agile IT. We will compare on-prem to cloud and finally hybrid. We will talk about S3 compatibility and why it is important, and then we will start talking about building a data-driven foundation for your IT. What does it mean? Why object storage is so important to build it? Of course, as always, when object storage is involved, TCO and ROI are a consideration that we have to put on the table, especially in multi-tenant scenarios. And in the end, we will have a discussion on the best practices, especially with you guys. If you want, you can ask your questions. We will answer questions in the end of the webinar, so that if there is something that we didn't cover or there is something that you want to learn more about, just ask your question. You have a tab in the control panel of your GoToWebinar application, and so it's quite easy to interact with us. And during the webinar, one other thing that we are going to do is to ask you questions, and the questions that you are asking are simple polls, just to understand what you're doing with your IT, what are your expectations for the future of your IT, how you are interacting with object storage, and so on. So just bear with us, and we will also comment on these polls, and we'll share the information with you. So without any further ado, let's start with the first poll. So is object storage a part of your IT infrastructure? Not yet. We are still evaluating it. We are in the process of implementing our first object store. We use it in the cloud when necessary. We have an on-prem solution serving a single application or use case, and we can't find any use for it yet. So let's start the poll. In the meantime, I can ask you the same question, John. Actually, from your point of view, from the point of view of the vendor, I'm just curious to know what's the situation that you see on the market.
So most customers that we encounter are implementing object storage for the first time. That will probably be 60% of our customers. But there also is the other 40% are folks that have tried it and have tried other solutions. So they've, in some cases, open source solutions, or in some cases, competitive solutions, and they've just found deficiencies that they need to make up. But about 60% are doing it for the first time.
This is interesting. I mean, this is common that object storage is gaining a lot of traction lately, and of course the fact that there is more interest and you are knowing more and more people interested in the topic is very good. Let me check how the poll is going, and in a few seconds we will give you the answers. Okay, we are pretty at the end, and we have well, more or less what you are saying. So the 75% of our attendees are still evaluating an object store solution. Very good. So we will have a lot of time to talk about why object storage is important during this webinar. So let's go on with the webinar and go directly to the I have a technical problem here. I still see the pop-up window. Okay, my fault. Sorry. Before starting talking about object storage, I want to start with a little premise. Okay, in this period, we had a huge crisis all across the world. Okay, and it was COVID-19. What changed in our infrastructure during this time? Okay, in the past years, we moved a lot of workloads, a lot of data from the core to the edge. I mean, if we start thinking about even 20 years ago, when connectivity became less expensive, we started to distribute offices more easily, and we had laptops, and finally, starting from 2007, 2010, we had more iPhones, smartphones in general, and then iPads. We started working more at the edge. So data creation moved at the edge from everything that was at the beginning at the cloud, and then sorry, at the core, and then the cloud came up, and we started moving data to the cloud. And then again, Edge started communicating directly to the cloud. Think about Office 365 or this kind of application, for example, where you access directly data that is created and consumed in the cloud. Okay, and but something happened actually. For a couple of years, we heard about cloud-only strategies, cloud-first strategies, and everybody was going to the cloud. All of a sudden, something changed. I mean, you received your AWS or Azure bill, and you discovered that the cloud is a little bit more expensive than you thought. I mean, yes, putting your data in the cloud is inexpensive at a first moment, but then you start accessing it. There are a lot of additional costs, and we saw a lot of repatriation projects where people started to move data back to the core or to the edge, and so they wanted more control on the cost, for example. And then again, another thing happened, and we are 2-3 months ago when this health crisis started, and we moved people from our offices to the edge. So again, we had to move data and create data and operate in a different way. So more from home, working from home became a new standard somehow, and we had to reconsider again the cloud. But the crisis is, you know, somehow I think of the past, not really the past, but we are changing again. At least here in Europe, we are opening up businesses again, so people can go to the office. I think also in the US is happening the same thing. So we are again in a very changing environment again, and that it's changing the way we are operate, and we see data sources everywhere, and also data consumed everywhere. I don't know, but maybe John, you want to comment to this? Did you see something similar looking at your customers, looking at how things are going with your organization?
Yeah, it's interesting, Enrico, because one of the advantages of on-prem object storage versus a public cloud is just the whole concept of data security, the fact that your data is behind your firewall and subject to all the normal controls you would apply to any other data in your environment. What's been interesting about the COVID situation is we've got a lot more people working from home, and that's increased the awareness of the exposure to ransomware. And one interesting thing about object storage is the capability for worm. Object storage can provide worm functionality. Cloudian provides a feature called object lock, which makes your data unchangeable. And what that does is it protects it from ransomware. So what we've seen in this COVID environment is the folks working from home are more exposed to ransomware attacks than they would be if they were sitting behind their firewall at work. And that's made IT managers aware of the fact they really need to be thinking hard about how they're providing ransomware protection for the data that, the backup copies that are residing in the data center. That data is even more critical than it ever was. Ransomware is, that those backup copies are the first target of a ransomware attack. So COVID has really increased the awareness that this is something critical and increased interest in getting this ransomware protection. So yes, it definitely has affected our customers' perception of how object storage can and should be used.
Yeah, in fact, this leads to the next slide where I wanted to talk again about this, data created everywhere and moved everywhere. So one of the first problems that we have when we talk about data is data gravity. Okay, the fact that if you create data at the edge, at the core, or in the cloud, okay, and you want to move it, data is difficult to move, especially if you are talking in the petabytes. Okay, it's easy to move a megabytes of data, but if you start talking about terabytes and petabytes, everything becomes very, very tricky. Okay, you need bandwidth, you need time, you need a lot of space and connectivity over every kind. So, but think about object storage. Okay, yes, you can have object storage at the core of your infrastructure, but there are a lot of solutions that allow to do, for example, tiering. Okay, so you can buy storage in the cloud if necessary. For example, if you want to expand capacity for a limited amount of time, okay, or you want to put cold data in the cloud, so data that you don't access again, or you can have an object store at the edge. Why not? Okay, the object store at the edge has the same functionality of your object store, and you can use your core object store as the central repository, as the consolidation point for your data, so that you can have rules to move data around. Okay, you can federate several object stores together and create a sort of a platform. Okay, this is the first time today that I talk about platform, but think about object storage as a platform. And then think about your front end. Okay, think about all the applications that you can have on top. NAS is an application. You can have, instead of having a traditional NAS, you can have a NAS gateway. Okay, so a NAS gateway is simply an appliance, a virtual appliance many times, that offers an FS and SMB to your clients. So something very natural for your PCs, your users, but actually the backend, the storage is actually an object store. Okay, only performance is managed locally with a cache, but all the data is in the object store. Okay, and then you can have block storage. More and more block storage devices can offload data to an object store. Okay, maybe it's not the same concept of the NAS, but actually there are more services that can be done this way. And backup, how many backup providers today can offload data directly to an object store? You can use your object store as a backup target. Okay, this is very convenient compared to old appliances that were not scalable. I think about virtual libraries, for example, here, that were not very scalable. They were tricky to for replicated data remotely, very expensive, and so on. And then you can have other services, innovative services like sync and share, the same thing that you can do with Dropbox, but for your enterprise. And again, other applications, the list of applications are compatible with S3, and we will talk about this. It's longer and longer by the day. And again, you can have similar services at the edge, or IoT application that need to save data in an object store, which is perfect. Video surveillance kind of application. Maybe you have a remote factory, you need to save everything. And and then you have the cloud. Big data application can sit in the cloud and take advantage of the object store. You know better than me that many big data frameworks now take advantage of object storage in the backend. So you have a very long list of applications that can take advantage of object storage natively now. What is really important is to think about all of this layer as an application layer for the object storage. So you have already created your object storage infrastructure, and everything, you know, is on top of it. It's simple, is less expensive than having several types of storage, of course, and you manage performance at the application level. So you separate capacity from the performance. Okay, I think that you can find something very familiar with this kind of chart, John, right?
Yeah, what you're really pointing at here, Enrico, is the whole idea of modernizing your storage infrastructure to encompass, you know, edge, core, and cloud in one unified platform. And I think that is so important. It's really what our customers are driving for. Is, you know, they're adopting a technology that has, you know, legs. It has real vision. It has something that can carry you beyond just another box in your data center. And that's the beauty of the object storage platform, is the same platform now can work across these three areas: edge, core, and cloud. And the other really important part of it that you pointed out was, you know, you don't have to start by boiling the ocean. You can start with something that's very simple. You know, use it as a backup target in your data center. That in itself provides a very cost-effective, you know, immediate ROI use case for this environment. And then once you've got that in place, you're perfectly positioned to start planning your next moves for how it can fan out into these other use cases and other environments. So you can start small and grow into something that has long-term, you know, benefits for your organization across multiple dimensions.
Exactly. And there is another important fact that adopting this kind of platform in the backend, okay, so this foundation layer where you have your data, and data moves according to rules that you define. Okay, so for example, think about having the object storage edge that replicates data on the core automatically. Okay, depending on the rules. Maybe you want all your old videos moved to the object store in the that you have at the core, or to the cloud, depending on, again, the policy of your company. But think about disaster recovery, for example. Okay, if you have all this rule ready, set up, and your data correctly moved between the different object stores, okay, what happens if you have a major disaster? You don't have access to the edge anymore. Well, it's not a problem, because this is just an application. So you lose your edge, but actually you can have your edge NAS immediately available, because it's an application. There is no state in the application, and everything is in the object store. So your user can access data from that was accessible only at the edge directly from the object store, and an application that maybe can be a virtual machine in this case at the core. And maybe COVID comes in and your sync and share, you know, you had most of the access to your sync and share locally. Well, you can move it globally on the cloud. I mean, that's nobody will force you to do, you know, something like something different. Sorry, something different than this. And again, do you need to access your video? Okay, let's start the video application or the specialized NAS that you used for accessing videos directly from the object store, because you already copied everything. Okay, and this is very easy and solves a lot of issues that many organizations have, including data protection, data replication, and data movement across environments. Okay, so why object storage? Okay, why we talk about object storage? And I can tell you the first thing is not just capacity. Okay, there are several reasons why we have different types of storage in our data center. Okay, block storage, of course, is what you use for your databases. Okay, it's in the data center, it's close to the server, it's accessed from one server accessed volume, maybe multiple volumes accessed by a single server, and you have a very low latency. Okay, data is very close to the server, but again, it's not very scalable. Okay, it's very, very tough to find systems that are more than 1 petabyte. And then you have NAS file in general. Okay, so SMB, NFS, it's in a local network. The protocols are very chatty. You can't have NFS and SMB across the world. Okay, it's very inefficient. And yes, it's still good for IOPS. Latency is not that good, but still good enough. And you have a better throughput, and this is more scalable. So you can also reach the multi-petabyte. But the world is going in another direction. I mean, we are talking about the internet. We are talking about accessible from everywhere and any device. Okay, and this is the most important part. Is again the S3 protocol. Okay, and the fact that S3 protocol is an HTTP based protocol. Okay, so it's easier, for example, to configure a protocol that is already there are rules in your firewall for already set for it. Okay, you don't need to do a lot of configuration around. The same object, the same file can be accessed by millions of users concurrently. These kind of systems have high throughput. It's not true that they are not fast. They are scale out system, and when we are talking about reading files and reading streaming files, so they are very efficient in doing that. And of course they support a lot of parallelism. We are talking again about million devices accessing the same files, and even if their latency is higher, and it's also higher because you are accessing this data remotely, okay, they can scale up to the exabytes. So we are talking about huge repositories. So the limit is not the scalability of this system. This is the major difference between object storage and all other types of storage. This is, everybody likes object storage. This is why big data is going more on object storage. HPC, AI workloads are more in the object storage domain now. Okay. Actually, John, you published not long ago an interesting story about an initiative that you have around the AI for object storage.
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting because the long-term vision of where all this is going is AI ML, and the fact that object storage provides you with a scalable platform where all that data about your organization is available from one system where it can be searched and accessed, in a matter of milliseconds, as opposed to, for example, having it on tape where it's not searchable, or when it's scattered across multiple storage platforms where, again, it's very, very difficult to find an asset you're looking for. But in the short term, is about building out a long-term strategy, right? In the short term, you can use this for backup. You can use it for NAS offload. You can use it as a snapshot for your block storage system. In the short term, object storage provides multiple use cases, but in the long term, and I think what our customers are really looking towards is where is this going, right? When we start implementing AI ML in a big way in our organization, and we're using it for decision making, having access to that data is going to be the most critical thing. We've got to be able to access it quickly. We've got to be able to search it, and it really needs to be protected, because that data now becomes the lifeblood of our organization, right? The winners among organizations will be those that can make the best decisions in the least amount of time. And to do that, you're going to have that data immediately accessible. And I would suggest you want that data to be in your data center under your control. And that's where object storage really plays a critical role, is because it can be scaled, because it's cost effective, because it's behind your firewall. You have that control over the data. You can obviously use the cloud where that makes sense, because that's gonna fit into many environments where you want to use that for data analysis, or perhaps you want to use it for a DR copy. Edge will also play a role, because that's where a lot of the data collection is going on. But it gets back to that earlier slide about having the three prongs covered: the edge, on-prem, and cloud in one unified environment. And that's exactly what object storage and the S3 API do for you.
Yeah, in fact, and let's go a little bit deeper on this discussion about on-prem versus cloud. Okay, so there are pros and cons for everything. We are well aware of this. I mean, when we talk about data and we talk about cloud, of course, we have agility and flexibility. Okay, if you have to start a new project, you just you are a swipe card away from your new infrastructure. I mean, you just go to a major cloud provider, you just spin up your virtual machine, and everything is there. Well, so the agility of the cloud is unbeatable, but and also the quick resource provisioning that you can have there. I mean, if you need to scale your infrastructure, you just ask for more, and they give it to you. It's very easy. And another big advantage is the pay as you go. I mean, you pay for what you really consume, and this is very, very interesting, because you don't have to put any money on the table to start. You just start using it. After a minute, you see that your bill is growing because you are using resources. This is a very interesting model. This is why everybody loves the cloud. There is another way to look at it. It's the fact that pay as you go is also you pay a lot for what you use. I mean, it's not only the dollar per gigabyte, for example. If you look at services like Amazon AWS S3, but it's common across the board, it's the first thing that you look at is dollar per gigabyte, and in many cases you say, this is a very good price, okay, especially compared with my traditional storage. The problem is that this is only the first line of your bill, and there are many other lines that come after that. I mean, object update, every time you read something that is that goes outside the cloud, you pay for all of it. So you have several additional lines in your bill for all the operation that you make, and the cost is unpredictable, first of all, and it could be very high. And the other thing is it's expensive. Okay, so if you sum all of these single operations and the dollar per gigabyte and everything else, the bandwidth and the other services that you need to make it work, it becomes really expensive. Okay, there are plenty of TCO analysis between on-prem and cloud object stores, and you always find that on-prem wins. And the other thing is on premises. Okay, so and we are at the opposite here. So you have to think that on premises is very consistent and predictable. You know what you have. You know what the performance are. Well, another thing of the cloud is not the performance is not always the same. So while if you are building your own infrastructure and you're designing it correctly, you know what you get. And as I mentioned several times, the on-premises infrastructure are cost effective in the end. We discovered that. I mean, in the last few years, many people started with this repatriation project because they discovered that it costs less to have your infrastructure. And well, the problem is, of course, that you have to pay before you start working. I have to say that many vendors, and maybe this is a question that I will ask to Cloudian as well, is that many vendors are starting to have licensing made differently, a subscription more than a perpetual license, and they are also providing options for subscribe to the hardware, so it becomes more flexible in this way. And the other thing is the rigidity of the infrastructure. Okay, even if you have all this financial help, you know, it's not immediate that you can get your new box with additional storage in a minute. Okay, so somebody has to ship it to you, it has to be delivered, and you have to install it and everything. But actually, we are simplifying all this process as well. So, John, for you, so how is, for example, the licensing now? Do you, as Cloudian, thinking about more of a perpetual license, or are you seeing a request from the field about subscriptions for your software, for example?
From a purchasing standpoint, we've got a lot of different options. You know, we can, for customers who want to license just the software, you can do that on a term license, and it's licensed by capacity. We offer a pure consumption model pricing through VMware, who's one of our resellers. And we also have a consumption model on appliances that's available in North America. So we have different options available for how you can go about you know, setting this up financially. And I think one thing I'd like to point out, Enrico, is that when people are making the comparison between cloud and on-prem, they're often comparing cloud and their existing on-prem infrastructure. And what you really need to remember is that object storage is different from traditional storage in several ways. First of all, it's a modular environment, making it very easy to grow, meaning that you don't have to start with, you know, your expansion, your capacity needs for a year out or a year and a half out. You can start with the capacity needs you have today and grow the environment non-disruptively over time. Secondly, everyone knows the pain of data migrations. That's something you just factor into your overall on-prem storage decision. And with object storage, I mean, that calculus becomes dramatically different because there's no more data migrations. Once you get started on an object storage environment, that environment essentially stays the same forever. You continue to swap out hardware nodes as you go forward, but that again is done non-disruptively. The overall storage system effectively stays the same forever. There's no data migrations to worry about once you're onto the environment. So yes, we've got flexible purchasing up front, but B, it gives you a lot more flexibility down the road to use the hardware you prefer, to avoid data migrations, and to start small and then grow as your needs expand. So it's a very different calculus than looking at traditional storage types.
Yeah, indeed. You had a very good point on this. Also, we didn't mention security, I mean, or compliance better. So it's really important to think about on-premises versus cloud also for this kind of problematics. So when you have something that you on which you have direct control, it's easier to sort out your data, to check your data, and to be compliant with you know, regulations and things like that, instead of having data dispersed in several repositories across the world. So this is quite important, especially with major cloud providers when you are in countries that are maybe European countries where you need to have your data saved locally in your country. So and you are not sure that this major service provider are able to grant this requisite. So sometimes it's very important to have, you know, on-premises infrastructure, even if you are a cloud firm. But there is another way to do that, and for me, it's hybrid cloud. So, and try to get the best of the two worlds. Of course, if we start thinking about agility and flexibility, you can have the agility and flexibility of the cloud. So if you need additional resources, you can have them immediately because you are connected to the cloud. And you can have both your quick and slow resource provisioning. And this is an advantage because quick, immediately accessible, maybe because you expand your local object store with something that is in the cloud, in the backend, and you get immediately more performance. But actually, this object store in the cloud is expensive. So as soon as you get your new box with additional capacity, you can get your data back and rebuild your data, your object store on your premises with additional data, with additional capacity. So you can easily scale when needed and check the price and add additional resources on premises. So in the end, this means pay for what you really need. I mean, you need something fast, you pay the cloud. You need something persistent, long term, you pay. You build your own infrastructure. So it's a consistent and balanced approach at the end, meaning that with the right technology, I mean, not all technologies are ready for hybrid cloud, but with the right technology, with the right backend, you can easily have the performance, have the capacity, and choose where to put your data. Okay, so what do you think about this hybrid cloud approach? I mean, looking at your product, you already have all these functionalities in the backend, right?
Absolutely, and this really goes back to your earlier slide about edge, on-prem, and cloud. They're all part of a balanced IT diet. They all need to work together, and we absolutely we love the cloud world. We are a supplier to cloud providers. And we see that as being a very important piece of the overall ecosystem. What we just want to remind people, though, is you really need to think about the combination of these three things, the edge, on-prem, and cloud. So what we see our customers doing with cloud is they use it for a DR purpose. They have either a replicated copy in the cloud, perhaps on a low-cost, less frequent access type of environment. They're using it for overflow. They're using it for remote offices where having a storage system on-prem at those sites isn't necessarily practical. There's many uses where the cloud makes sense, but you want to have an on-prem system that makes that interchange easy, right? You want an on-prem system where that cloud compatibility is built in and that cloud management is built in. And that's one thing you get with object storage is you get that the cloud management capability is part of the infrastructure. It's not an add-on. It's not something you have as a piece of middleware. It's built in, and you can actually view the cloud assets on the same screen as you're viewing your on-prem. You can see that entire environment on one screen and see exactly what data is where, and you can search it. You can search across that data regardless of where it is. Cloud, on-prem, or edge. You can search it all from one location. So yes, we are very much an advocate of hybrid cloud. These environments very much need to work together, and we enable that across the board.
Very good. So let's start talking about data-driven. This data-driven foundation that we talked about many times in the first slide. Okay, what is it? The data-driven foundation. What are the first consideration that we need to do for talking about? First of all, it's data gravity. Okay, data gravity is defined as the fact that data is a mass. The more you put together, the harder it is to move it. Okay, and when we start talking about object stores, we're talking about big numbers. Okay, it's not your block storage, it's not even your NAS. It's something that is bigger because the more you have, the more you want. In any case, because when we describe the fact that you can have multiple applications, and I know a lot of end users still having object storage for one application, but there are other users that are piling up any sort of data in their object store, and they are actively trying to look at S3 compatible application and S3 compatible front-end system just to simplify their infrastructure. So these object stores become bigger and bigger. And the other thing is data silos. Okay, so when we're talking about building a platform, no matter if physically speaking you have the edge, the core, and the cloud, okay, but if you have the right technology, to control all of it. Maybe from the core, where you have this hybrid technology in the backend, so where you can offload data that you don't use to the cloud or whatever. But actually, if you can consolidate everything and you can remove the creation of data silos, something that we started to do in a few years ago before the cloud. Okay, everybody was talking about data center silos. We hated data center silos. Now with the virtualization, with all this technology, we started to remove these silos. But with the cloud, we are creating again silos, okay, cloud silos. And this is something that we don't want. We don't want the data to move seamlessly between different clouds on premises. And of course, we don't want to create barriers between these environments. And of course, there is an important discussion that everybody does. Dollar per IOPS and dollar per gigabyte. This is important for everybody. I mean, you can't build something that is not sustainable over time. Okay, so yes, we talk about all flash, and I agree. I love all flash. All flash is the best thing in the world, but you can't have all flash because it's too expensive. Okay, and anyway, you need some balance. Okay, and it can come from object storage, just because you have a better dollar per gigabyte. Okay, because most of the object storage, to be honest, are still hybrid. So with some flash, mostly for metadata reasons, and then you have a lot of disks that are still very inexpensive. So you can build a larger infrastructure with a reasonable cost. And again, always on. Why we talk about always on? Because everything is always on, and object storage is always on. It's a scale-out architecture. If you lose a node, who cares? If you lose two nodes, in most of the cases, who cares? I have clients that started to have, extended data protection with erasure coding and similar things, and they think about their object store as something that they can leave there. I mean, they do maintenance once per month. These are big installation, and they can afford to go once per month in the data center, swap replace the failed disk, and that's it. So it's very sustainable infrastructure. Less people managing it, first of all, but also reliable, even if there are multiple failures in the cluster. This is not something that you have from every kind of storage system. And last but not least, as John mentioned several times, make all data searchable. This is a goal for your foundation. Okay, so we are piling up petabytes and petabytes. Nobody deletes things anymore. Okay, are you deleting your data? No, because you could use it in the future again. But if you can't search it, if you don't know what you have in your storage system, then it becomes, useless. So this is another very important component of building this data-driven foundation. I don't know, did I lay out all the points here, John, or do you have something to add?
No, I think you laid it out very well, Enrico. And I think your title, the title of Foundation, kind of speaks volumes about the whole point here. Is you're creating a foundational storage environment that you're building everything else from. And this is a shared environment, and that's so important because now that gives you the ability to search everything. That also drives down your costs. The fact that it's a shared environment means you're getting the lowest possible OpEx because you're only having to manage one storage environment. Also, it is the lowest cost in terms of CapEx of any storage environment that exists. It is built to be cost effective because of the way it scales, because of the fact that it is built off of industry standard servers. There's no specific hardware design required. It really drives down the CapEx cost as well as the OpEx. And it provides you that, again, foundation to prepare for AI/ML. So you're getting yourself positioned for the future while solving very real cost and scalability issues today. So, if you're in a situation where you're looking at, ordering, data shoeboxes from some companies to send your data off someplace else, you might want to think about the long term. How's that data going to come back, right? That shoebox only goes one way. When you want that data back, it's going to cost. And your alternative is keep it on-prem at less cost, in a more scalable environment, preparing yourself for the future while also making yourself, putting yourself in a situation where you've got something that's very easy to manage and very easy to grow right now. So it solves a problem today, and it's going to solve even bigger problems tomorrow.
Yep. And so here we are going. Here we are again with a poll. Would have object storage changed? How you responded to COVID-19? So looking at all what we talked about, okay, how you can create a platform that manages all your data, and on top of it, consider all the other storage system like NAS and block as extension of this platform. But not only that, also application and so on. So a data platform that is accessible from everywhere. So would have it changed the way you reacted to COVID-19? So, and the answers are, it would have been a game changer. Interesting approach, but I need to dig more into it before answering. I'm not sure our infrastructure would need a major redesign to fit in this model. I was already considering a similar approach for my infrastructure. Actually, all of this sounds like science fiction. Okay, let's go with the poll. I hope you won't answer the last one, because this is not science fiction. I mean, we have people already doing this kind of infrastructure, implementing this kind of infrastructure all across the globe. So this is something that is possible. There are technologies that are allowed to build this. And in your case, what's the experience with, if you have some customer that experienced the COVID-19 and took advantage of object storage to, to face this challenge and maybe solve it brilliantly? I mean, you're talking about ransomware. Did you see any other use case where object storage was very good for this COVID crisis that we had?
Well, certainly collaboration. We do offer a file sync and share software, which provides, for collaboration where the data remains entirely behind your firewall. So unlike cloud-based services where that data is then out in the, in the public domain, or it's potentially hackable, we offer file sync and share and collaboration software where the data is in your data center behind your firewall, and has far more security tools and checks than you'd have on a commercial cloud-based solution.
Okay, very good. So we have, well, this is interesting. I mean, well, 20% answered this is science fiction. Okay, we need to have a conversation with these guys later. But it's interesting that for the rest, it was also, I was considering a similar approach, or it would be a game changer or an interesting approach, but I need to dig more. So at least 60% was with us and in building this kind of configuration, and others would like to learn more. And with this, we can go directly to the next section of this webinar. So how to start with object storage. And sorry. And so the first thing about object storage that I always suggest to all my clients is that you don't have to think too big. Okay, if you think too big, you will fail. It's expensive, it's hard to justify internally and everything. Okay, so object storage is scalable and multi-tenant by nature, meaning it will support your growth anyway. So first of all, S3 compatibility. We talked about this several times. Okay, every application in the market is compatible with S3. Now we also with other products, but it's 99% compatible with S3. Okay, so just check this feature, okay? Not only files, but S3. This gives you the first advantage. And if you look at the market, at the solution available, you will find that a growing number of these solutions are compatible with S3 and can use S3 directly as a form of storage. One application to start. I mean, again, don't think about migrating everything day one. It doesn't work. You can do it in small steps. Of course, it's easier, and then you can add more and more and more. Okay, and to start with the one application, I also suggest another thing. You don't need to think about you don't need to think about a physical environment immediately. Okay, you could start also with a virtual environment, a few terabytes borrowed from other storage on a virtual on a set of virtual machines, and then you can migrate. Okay, because this migration could also happen very smoothly. Okay, you don't need to create any sort of service disruption. You just add physical node to a virtual cluster, and then you start decommissioning all nodes. Most of the solutions in the market support this kind of functionality. So you start small. You start with resources that you have already in your data center, and then you move to a larger cluster made of physical machines. Okay, I have to tell that I have so a lot of things. Also, people started with the decommissioned servers from other parts of the data center. Okay, so most of the object store in the market are the licenses just for capacity. So the fact that you have one node or 15 node doesn't change much. And I have clients started with decommissioned servers with not a lot of capacity, but they started with servers that were out of maintenance. Why? Because the object store is very resilient. As we said, you have 10 nodes, you have erasure coding, probably you can lose 2 or 3 nodes and still have all your data. So it's something that you can save at the beginning, start with your project, and then build from there. Of course, there is something important that you have to check in your object store. QoS, so quality of service, integration with the cloud to do all the things that we talked about, and performance. Okay, why all of this? Because quality of service is important to enhance your multi-tenancy. And we said multi-tenancy is intrinsic in the object store because you have several users. Every user has its bucket, so you can create a user for each application, for example. Okay, but how you manage performance, how you manage access to these buckets is important because the famous noisy neighbor effect you want to avoid. Okay, so you don't want that an application that is a secondary application will disrupt a service that is critical for your organization. Cloud integration, as we said, you want to control where you data goes and comes from the cloud. You want to have this possibility to take advantage of the cloud for immediate expansion, but also for cold data sometimes. And performance is becoming critical because more IoT, more big data workloads, so more performance that you want to. Oh, sorry. And so, do you have something to add to this, John? I mean, did we touch the most important things to check before starting an object storage project?
Yeah, multi-tenancy is certainly the fundamental. It's got to be a shared environment. To be shared, it's got to have quality of service controls built in, so you can avoid the noisy neighbor problem, exactly as you said. You should also look for things like billing capability because you're going to have many users on the system. You're going to want to keep track of which users are doing what. You may want to do chargeback in your organization. Cloudian integrates all of these things in their environment.
Right. So at least to show back what they are using. Yes, I totally agree.
Exactly.
With you. So and we have a couple of additional consideration about how to improve TCO and ROI, return on investment, with the object storage. So the more the better for dollar per gigabyte. Okay. One thing, as I said, you can start very small. Okay. And I think that there is no lower limit now. You have a limit. You have a limited number of nodes that are, that could be very inefficient from the dollar per gigabyte point of view, but you can start. And then more nodes you add, the better. Okay. If you start more nodes, you can also start to add bigger nodes, fatter nodes that has more capacity on them. And the more you add, the better the dollar per gigabyte, because it's just economics of scale. Okay. You can use erasure coding differently. You can use several types of different erasure coding schemas in the same cluster. So you get better and better and better from the dollar per gigabyte perspective. Performance counts, as we said, I tell you this again. So we are going from hard disk drive only object store, hybrid object stores that are way faster because they can manage handle metadata very, very well now. And we are seeing more and more all flash object stores to manage very small files, to manage, these are still niche use cases, but with big data, with AI and so on, they will become more and more important over time. And of course, system analytics. Okay, we are talking about petabytes. In some cases, we are talking about dozens of petabytes in the same system, if not in the biggest one, exabytes. Okay, you want to know what is happening in your system. You want to know what your users are doing, what files are touching, objects are touching, and what is hot, what is not. So these are all fundamental points for your system. And another thing is make it self-service. Okay, so as soon as you start thinking more about consolidation and you have more parts of your organizations using the service, make it self-service. Let them allocate resources when necessary, because as John said a few moments ago, you have chargeback and showback mechanism. So why not? Okay, they can use the system and they can save in that system instead of saving data in more expensive systems. So, oops, this is the last. So, John, do you want to add one more thing here? We are going a little bit late in time, so let us know your comment on this.
No, I think just two things. One is, we just announced an analytics and monitoring feature called HyperIQ, and all of this is available on a free trial. So you can just go to cloudian.com/free trial, and you can try HyperStore, you can try HyperIQ, the management and observability package, all in your own data center, on your own server, or even a laptop free of charge. So you can literally start as small as you want, as small as just running it on your laptop, and go from there. So we make it really easy to get started. We provide all these things you talk about on your slide, and it's a way to get going.
Fantastic. So last poll for today: what would the most important characteristic for your object store? So the possibility to build a data foundation layer with an hybrid approach, of course, the lowest possible dollar per gigabyte, a good mix of performance and dollar per gigabyte, strong multi-tenancy, good TCO, and ease of use. This is a multi-answer poll, so you can answer multiple points here. Just see what happens, and of course, for me, it's the possibility to build this kind of infrastructure that is, the foundation layer on which you can build. But I'm curious to see what our attendees will say after watching all this webinar, and and we will see. Let's see how many people already answered. And here we go. A couple of moments more, and then we will give you the okay. Let's see. All the answers are in, and voila. So, very good. The possibility to build a foundation layer and a good mix of performance and dollar per gigabyte. This is quite interesting, and I think that you know, it's quite expected. I mean, everybody wants a good dollar per gigabyte from the object store, but getting a good mix of performance and dollar per gigabyte gives you the possibility to implement more application in the long run. So not just the lowest tier, the cold tier, but actually do more, especially if you're looking at searching data and building applications on top of like AI and machine learning on top of your object storage infrastructure. What's your consideration on this, Paul, John?
Oh, this is exactly in line with what we hear from our customers. Is, you know, obviously they're looking for build a foundation for the future. That's, you know, that's, everyone wants to have the vision, but ROI today is what matters. You know, Cloudian is nearly 500 customers, and every one of them did an ROI calculation exactly as our audience here suggests. You know, the dollar per gigabyte ultimately matters, but it's also building a foundation for the future.
Okay, very good. So we reached the top of the hour, so we don't have a lot of time to answer questions. I just want to answer one because I think it's important, and this is, can you manage I/O speed and priority of access across the various applications you highlighted? If shared across enterprise, you may have I/O response conflicts. As we said, QoS is the answer, okay? And maybe this is something that is more for John for me in this case. So you have a strong QoS mechanism, as if I remember well, right?
Yeah, just 2 points on this, Enrico. So one is, yes, we have a QoS mechanism built in, and secondly, this is a distributed environment, meaning you can have storage nodes sitting anywhere in any office or any location, all connected together in one system, and all requests can be handled by the most local node. So you can always have data immediately accessible from a local solution, while having a distributed environment that goes across many locations.
Fantastic. So we reached the end of the webinar. And again, the other question will be answered via email in the next couple of days. Thank you very much for the time you dedicated to us today. It was a pleasure talking with you, John. Thank you again for sponsoring this this webinar. And what can we add? You can find me on gigaom.com. Just search for the analysts. I am in the list of the analysts, and you can find everything about object storage that I write there. And you can find Cloudian on Cloudian.com. Anything that you want to add, John?
/free trial. And thank you very much, Enrico.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.